to get started here. Welcome, everyone. I am Thea Ryan, and the person probably next to me is Stacy Shepard. We're from OLLI at the University of South Dakota. We are so happy that you are here and welcome. We would love to have you join as a member of our OLLI if you aren't already. And if you're far away, like Lisa,
Yes.
is in Florida, we hope that you'll check out your nearest OLLI. Just Google OLLI on Google and find out where the nearest one to you is. So thank you everyone for attending, and especially thanks to our guest today, John Boylan, who is the Guinness Book of World Records largest collector of Swamp Thing memorabilia. I am so excited. I'm the geek of the world, and those kind of things thrill me to death. So John, welcome, and we'd love to hear about your collection.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I started collecting Swamp Thing in my 20s. I was a big fan of comic books when I was a little kid, but as I got older and there was things to do outside and play, I kind of abandoned comic books until I was in my 20s. I picked up a Swamp Thing book, and the rest is history. The guy right here is Swamp Thing. Ooh, there we go. He's a comic book character that was created in 1971. In his 52-year history, he has had some of the best artists and writers create content for his books. He has had 2 movies in the 80s. He had a cartoon series in the 90s, and he's had 2 TV shows. One was in the 90s and one was in 2000s. I did not get into Swamp Thing until I read Alan Moore. He's a British writer, until I read his series. Alan Moore is arguably one of the best comic book writers or literature writers, certainly in my lifetime. I can't recommend the Swamp Thing books enough. They're wonderful adventure stories, and they're always paired with amazing artwork. And the wonderful thing about being a Swamp Thing fan is if the stories were ever lacking, the artwork was always on point. It's a really nice balance, but typically it's really great across the board. What really got me into collecting Swamp Thing were these little Swamp Thing slippers that I'll show you. These guys right here. They're kind of ridiculous. I don't know what child would ever want those, but as an adult, I wanted those very badly. And for how unique the pieces are, it kicked off my collecting obsession with Swamp Thing. I knew that these were out here along with the comic books. And so I wanted to delve in, what else is out there? What else can I find? Of course, there's a ton of things. These are some stationary items. You got some pencils, rubber stampers. And once I started tracking these really weird, obscure school supplies down, it just did not stop. My collection got up to about 700 or so items, and I decided, kind of as a joke, to apply for a Guinness World Record. They emailed me back about a month later, and they said, congratulations, no one has this record, so you can go ahead and do it. And so I was like, might as well. I filled out the paperwork already. The picture you can see over my shoulder is actually a picture of me from the 2018 Guinness World Book. In order to get a Guinness World Record, if the record hasn't already been set, you can set it. So really, if you have 15 unique items, non-duplicates, 15 unique items of anything, if there hasn't been a record, you can apply for that record. The Guinness process is free, but you kind of have to work a little bit harder. To get a Guinness record, you have to hold a public event that the public can go to, so it's publicly verified. And you also have to have Guinness judges present. The judges can be members of your community that are credible and reputable within the field of the record, or you can pay judges to come to your town, which costs a boatload of money. I was not interested in doing that. And so I called up a local Iowa comic book professional named Phil Hester. I also called local businessman and comic enthusiast Andy House and a few others, and they came to validate the record. You have to photo document everything. You have to video document everything. You have to make spreadsheets and have corresponding photos for every single item. You have to have the serial numbers for the products. It's very labor intensive, but it was well worth it. Here's a picture over my shoulder at the event. As you can see, all the comic books are in the background. There are certainly much more comics than that in my collection now. This was in 2015, and my collectibles at that time were about 800 items, and today they're around 4,000 items. I have everything from props from the movie. Actually, I have a screen-worn suit right right there. This was actually from the second movie. So in my collection, I have everything from props to comic books to novelty items, posters from the movie, advertisements, articles, things of that nature. Let's see. After the Guinness event, I wanted to make the ultimate reference library for Swamp Thing fans. One thing I noticed was there was never one place to go to find every single appearance and every single collectible. Not necessarily to purchase, but just to reference. So if you are a fan of Swamp Thing, you too can find all the books that you want. This type of task is nearly impossible to do for Batman or Superman because their catalog is so extensive and the collectibles are crazy. Luckily for Swamp Thing, he's more of like a B grade character, so he didn't have as many collectibles. Swamp Thing and Batman, or excuse me, Batman and Superman would have a toothbrush, toothpaste, soap, all these different items. And luckily Swamp Thing just didn't have that amount. So it seemed very realistic that I could put together kind of the ultimate library or reference. So what I did was I created a website called rootsoftheswampthing.com. And that website houses every collectible, every appearance, really every single thing you could possibly imagine from Swamp Thing. It's referenced by fans of Swamp Thing and friends from around the world. What's really nice and neat about this this Guinness World Record is it kind of opened up a lot of doors for networking. I've been able to become friends and familiar with some of the Swamp Thing creators and family members of the Swamp Thing creators who have since passed. And it's just really neat to be able to interview those people and get to know them and find out the history of not only the character, but the people that went behind it, because to me, the people are the best part about the whole thing. Through all of this networking, I started my own magazine. It's called a fanzine. When I was a kid, fanzines were, popular in the 80s. Nowadays, not so much, and everything is digital. I also was really obsessed with like the ephemera that came with fan clubs. You got your fan club button, you got your fan club card. That stuff just didn't, exist when I was coming up as much. And so I went ahead and started a Swamp Thing fan club, and we got our cards right here. Whoops. But yeah, so anyway, I started a Swamp Thing fan club. It's more of a, I guess, an honorary club. It doesn't, we don't send out mailers and stuff like that. But it's just fun to like be a part of that type of feeling back when, back when those things were more popular. So I also decided to create the Swamp Thing fanzine, and it is put together. I design it every year, but it's made up of art and articles by artists and writers from around the world. A lot of notable comic book creators have been featured on it. Stephen Bissett, Tom Yates, Rick Veitch, John Toddleben, a lot of famous names. They were big in the 70s and 80s in comic books. So by collecting Swamp Thing, I've been fortunate enough to meet a bunch of people and work on these Swamp Thing fanzines. And the fanzine has shipped around the world. Here's a picture of somebody who bought the magazine. This is in England. Somebody else in Brazil on the beaches. I think we'd all like to be there if you're in South Dakota. Here's Milan. We got Amsterdam. We got Hawaii, Hong Kong, Tasmania, and Fargo, North Dakota. It's always nice to sell books at home. But yeah, so that's another exciting thing. Another really great item from around the world is this book over my shoulder here. This is a very rare Hindi Swamp Thing book. I've not been able to get it translated, but this is one treasure that I've absolutely never seen before. And also, if someone is interested in getting the Holland Files fanzine, that's what it's called, the Swamp Thing fanzine, you can go to rootsoftheswampthing.com, and at the very top, you can see a Holland Files link to that. By connecting to various Swamp Thing fans, I've also been fortunate enough to get to know people who work for DC Comics. By networking with various people, I got to interview a fellow named David Anthony Kraft. He was slated to write Swamp Thing when it was being canceled in the first series. During trying to set up an interview, it was a little difficult. And so it didn't work out. But what he did send me was a high resolution PDF of the script of an unpublished comic book that is sought after by Swamp Thing fans around the world. It had never been published before. It was supposed to be published in, I believe, 1976 or 74. But it never came to light. So when David Anthony sent me a high resolution PDF of this comic book, I figured everyone already knew about it or had already seen it. Well, that was not true. And I'm happy to say by sending along that PDF to a publisher at DC, they printed this unpublished story. So it finally came to light thanks to just me, a fan, just passing along something that, I had no idea. But so if you ever come across this book, it's the Bronze Age, oops, let me get out of the way. The Bronze Age Volume 1 of Swamp Thing. It has a story in there because someone from South Dakota made it happen. It's pretty neat. I've always been into collecting, and the real passion I think behind it is the organization of it. I love getting into the minutia of things, and I'm also a completist. I love to see things through and see them in their entirety, and then sharing that with people. I think my dream job would probably to be an archivist in some library's basement, but I don't do that, unfortunately. But it's really fun to share these things and share these little obsessions with people. Here's another picture of various items from my Swamp Thing collection. As you can see, there's a bunch of figures and puzzles, and really it's become so much that it kind of blurs together. I would have my collection on display for you behind me, but we have a 1.5-year-old, and as you can tell, he is prone to picking things up and biting them and licking them and crushing them. So everything is safely tucked away. But yeah, I encourage everybody to tap into their passions in collecting. I know that sometimes collecting can seem almost like a hoarder type thing to do, but as someone who does not like clutter, I can safely say that organization really helps your home life when you don't have things all over the walls and all over the floor. But yeah, I think that about covers it for Swamp Thing. I'd love to know if anybody has any questions or comments.
Oh my gosh, that is an amazing story. And the fact that you got that missing issue published is just astonishing.
Yeah, it really blew me away.
Yeah. We do have a question in our chat, but people, if you have questions, feel free to unmute and ask your questions. Go ahead.
I'd love to know if you would recommend a good movie that's on any of the streaming services that we could see it again. I can remember some from my actually, it wasn't my childhood. I was a little bit older than sort of like an afternoon movie or whatever, and they were always a grade B movie. And I'd love to see one of those again. Can you recommend any? Absolutely.
The first Swamp Thing movie that came out, I believe it was 1980 or 81. It was with Adrienne Barbeau.
Yes.
Yeah, and that one's, it takes itself a little too seriously. But in the early 90s, it came out again with Heather Locklear. And that one, as terrible as it is extremely entertaining. And I enjoy that one a lot.
What's it called?
It's called Return of the Swamp Thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw someone ask the question, where do I keep all the items? In my old house, I used to have, the whole second floor was a museum, and it was wall-to-wall Swamp Thing collectibles, and so that's where I kept them. But since we had our son and we moved into a new house, right now everything is kind of Tetris together, most perfect way in boxes, and it's safely stored away. And I also have a little tiny comic room, little nook that I kind of have things displayed. But all the precious items and the more, I guess, items that are more fragile, they're currently stored away until our son gets a little bit older.
Do you have to renew with Guinness, or do they keep track of you, or was it just a one-time thing?
So I used to have a Guinness representative. They assign you one just to help you with all the paperwork because it is very extensive. And when I spoke to her some years ago, she told me that that all I'd have to do is resubmit my spreadsheet and I could update my items. Well, around COVID, I emailed Guinness, and my rep is no longer there, and they said that I would have to do the whole process over again.
Oh, yeah.
And so I am not interested in doing that again. It was very fun, but I encourage, if anybody has more than 4,000 Swamp Thing items, go to town, because I would love it if you broke the record.
There's another question in the chat. Are you pumped about James Gunn's Swamp Thing movie announcement?
I am. I hope it's entertaining. I hope it doesn't take itself too seriously. I think that's one thing. Well, and this is just my personal opinion. One thing that can be tough is comic book movies take themselves so seriously. And James Gunn seemed to have some fun with some of those Guardians of the Galaxy movie. And the little Groot character, the little tree, we all saw what he could do with that. And so Swamp Thing, if he looks anywhere close to that, it's going to be really fun.
Excellent. Someone else asked, how do you keep your collection safe? Do you have it insured?
I do, absolutely. I keep it safe by keeping it off the ground so water won't damage it. The way that everything is packed, it's in such a way that everything's cared for and no weight is on it. Separate, they're all in actually separate cardboard boxes and then taped shut for some of the items. But yeah, they're well cared for in a temperature safe environment and stuff like that.
Rick just did some research for us, and he said none of the major streaming services have return of Swamp Thing, but it is available to rent from Amazon Prime, so we can get a hold of that movie. Might cost us a little.
Oops. Can I ask, just why does someone from South Dakota, why are you involved with the Swamp Thing? I think you were more like a snow kind of, I'm really curious.
So I was actually born in Savannah, Georgia, and Savannah actually is the site of the filming location for Return of the Swamp Thing. And so whenever I've gone back to visit family, I always stop in at the old set locations.
Oh, lovely. Oh, wonderful. What fun.
Is that a thing you can do? Like, I know when movies are filmed in different areas, they do have like a tour of, you can see where Tombstone was shot or where Dances with Wolves was shot. Is that a thing in Savannah that you can go to Swamp Thing?
Unfortunately not, since it is such a low-grade movie. But the nice thing is, though, is where it was filmed is at a location called Oatland Island, which is an animal preserve. And so they have nature trails and whatnot. And one of the ponds within the trails called Ledbetter Pond, that is the primary location of where they shot the movie. So as you're going around looking at, they have like surprisingly enough, they have a bison there. And so you can go see this bison and wild pack of wolves, and then you turn a corner, all of a sudden it's this like picturesque swamp that they filmed a movie.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Anybody else have any questions? I know John would love to answer them. I appreciate, like Kathy said, I appreciate his enthusiasm. This is really makes learning about Swamp Thing really fun. John, do you participate in Supercon here in Sioux Falls? I
have in the past. I'm more of an introvert, so I don't go to a lot of the big events. It just sometimes can be so overwhelming, but I did participate in the first Supercon. I actually set up a booth of a ton of my Swamp Thing collectibles, and I didn't sell any, but I just wanted to show them to some people, and it was really neat to have fellow fans just come by and just talk about the character and stuff like that.
So are you the guy that takes the figures out of the packages, or do you leave them all together?
I'm the guy that buys two and opens one and keeps it away. But actually, you know, what I do more so now is I'll buy two and then I'll hold a free raffle on my website. I find more enjoyment giving stuff away. So I'll, you know, if something hard to find comes out, I'll buy two and then I'll announce on my website, you know, like answer this question, you know, what's your favorite Swamp Thing character? And then as easy as that, I just draw a name out of the hat and I, you know, send them some stuff. So that's typically what I do. As I've gotten older, I've gotten much less precious about keeping stuff in the box.
That's fun. Tom on chat wants to know Marvel's Man-Thing, yay or nay?
I'd have to say nay. I completely respect the character, and just for backstory for some people out there unfamiliar, Marvel Comics is basically Marvel and DC are the two big comic book companies. Marvel came out with Man-Thing a couple months before Swamp Thing came out, and the big hubbub is, oh, they copied each other. But when you look at it, a swamp creature or a creature of this nature has been around, you know, since the dawn of time. If you go back to Celtic folklore, there's a man of the green. He's this, you know, earth god who protects the earth and whatnot. But anyway, I never got into Man-Thing. I think the design is funny, but the stories they've never captured my attention, even though they've had an amazing cast of talent work on them.
What is your favorite thing about the character Swamp Thing?
I think it's the limitless possibilities. He's not like Swamp Thing, or excuse me, he's not like Superman or Batman. He's not a, you know, great looking character. And a lot of his stories, when they first start out, it's that whole judge a picture, you know, by the cover, or excuse me, judge a book by its cover. Instantly people are afraid, but he ends up saving the day. So he's the hero, and then people learn a lesson of like, oh, this person was here to help me, I should stop judging this person. And so there's that kind of underlying thing. There's also this wonderful constant underlying theme of humanity, what it means to be human, and what it means to be, you know, this plant monster. Swamp Thing used to be human. He was a scientist who died in an explosion. He was working on a plant serum that would basically grow plants and vegetables within a desert and desert environment. Therefore, people could eat and survive in the most barren wastelands. Someone wanted that formula and they killed him for it. He died in the explosion covered in the formula, and then mixed with the swamp water and the formula, he became the person, you know, over my shoulder. And so there's this humanity, and he's constantly struggling, like, can I be human again? Do I want to be human again? And so there's like these wonderful stories of like what humans do to each other and to the earth, and then, you know, where does he belong, and that type of thing. So there's so many appealing levels. And it's funny because when I was younger, I never would have appreciated these things. I just wanted, you know, like shoot 'em up, you know, action stuff. And then when I got older and I was in my 20s, I was like, oh, these connect to like on a much deeper level than just your typical comic book story.
That's amazing. I love it. Any other questions, anyone? All right. Well, John, thank you. Wow, this has been absolutely fantastic. I am so excited to meet you, and I'm going to try to get you to come to Supercon.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, take care. Remember that we are here all week. Well, today is Friday, yay. But we'll have more next week at 12:30 every day. John, come back and join us.
Will do.
Got some other fun things coming up too. Use this same link and come and visit us. Thank you, everyone from OLLI at the University of South Dakota. Thanks so much, John.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone. Thanks for coming.